can't really see my pen.
All right, Threshold World College Edition proudly presents Tamika Ortiz. So excited to be able to be speaking with Tamika today. Tamika Ortiz is the chapter founder of Sigma Iota Alpha and on the campus of SUNY Binghamton University. Welcome, Tamika.
Thank you very much. Glad to be on this threshold with Miss Melanie.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm just going to get right into it. I want the folks to know more about you founding this organization. So first of all, congratulations on 30 years. I understand that you all started back in 1990.
Yeah, back in 1990, that's where it all started. Obviously, when you start looking at sororities and fraternities, you start seeing years, that you start seeing, 1804, 1908, all of these years start popping up when people are showing their pride. It's just like culture. When you're in a fraternal organization, whether it's sorority or fraternity, like those things matter. So just like Independence Day or what have you, we kind of value that same thing. So my particular sorority, Hermandad Sigma Iota Alpha, Incorporada, because it's Latina based, but we're multicultural, was founded in 1990. And yes, this past weekend, actually, we celebrated our 30 years. So 30 years, we're still, providing services to the community, uplifting, women of color, across the board. And, we're still here. And
awesome.
College, so it just continues.
Awesome, and happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yeah, well, just like for you, girl, we celebrate every day.
Awesome, love it, exactly, right? All right, so now, on your college campus, I imagine there were options available for different sororities. So why did you feel the need for another one?
Basically, yeah, when you go onto the campus, we're right now it's 2020. So I pledged in 1999. So I'm going on my 21st year as a sister, as a founding chapter sister at Binghamton University. So you're thinking 20 years ago, we went to school together. You knew the options or the lack thereof options that women of color had back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, coming from a big inner city, going upstate to the boondocks, that's what we called it. When you went upstate, it's all trees. You don't know that. That's not an environment that we were accustomed to. And also being a first generation college bound and high school graduate, the first thing for me was get the college experience, do things that no one in my family had ever done. So going to college was one, finishing college was two, but also taking advantage of everything that the college experience had to offer. So times we saw or heard of sororities and fraternities obviously was through television. So you saw all these comedies, all these things, and you saw the big houses that, all the parodied or stereotypical frat houses and sorority houses. You saw them and they had a certain look. But how does that transfer for us? What does that look like for us? So I got there. I had a little bit of information from high school, but once I got there, I saw that we had options, but they were minimal. Mm-hmm. So if, let's say, there were, 3 on campus that were Latina-based sororities, and then let's say 2, possibly 3 fraternities for Latino men, and then you had, the basics and the most popular African-American sororities and fraternities that were there as well. So when you went, depending on what your environment was back in New York, downstate rather, or New York City, that's how you went. So when I got there, going to school in New York City in a predominantly Black and Hispanic school, but more so African American. And like we've spoken before, the only thing that separated us then at Graphic Communication Arts was our boroughs. So it was you were Uptown, or you were Brooklyn, or you were Queens, and maybe one or two lived in Manhattan, but not many. We were all from the outer boroughs. So we all kind of got along. We were all together. It was never, race was never a question. So going to college, my thing was, oh, you know, this is my comfort zone. Let's, let me see where I fit. And when I was looking, I was deterred in certain areas. And then what I did see, it was just kind of like cookie cutter to me. So I was looking for individualism. I was looking for something that had a little bit more substance. So when you get to a campus where you saw that when, they're looking at freshmen, they're looking at numbers. They weren't looking at the individual. And once I realized that that was what a lot of the sororities were options were, like more about quantity as opposed to quality, that they were just kind of picking and choosing according to what they can bring onto their chapter and their campus. So they just wanted kind of to add more, to say, oh, well, we have, 10 sisters on campus, or we have 15 sisters on campus. So they may just kind of like say, oh, she looks like a nice girl, and try and recruit you. But even if you didn't kind of like fit their bill, you possibly could still get passed in. So once you kind of see that everybody had they were all kind of cliquey. And I was like, the same way I was in high school, I was more of a kind of do my own thing type of person. I was never a trend follower. So once I got there, I'm like, I need something that's looking at me as an asset to the organization. I said, to me, it was something more that it was gonna, I wanted it to surpass the college life. I didn't want to say, oh, let me just do it to say I did it and then move on. So for me, I was just looking for more, and there at the time just wasn't it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, one of the things that you heard when Tamika was talking is the fact that we went to high school together. So she was actually our student government president at the school that we attended back in the day. So yeah, she's a friend. And those student government presidents, they continue to be leaders. So it's amazing that years later, we would graduate high school, you would go to your college, and you would actually be like a founder of the chapter, like at your college campus. And that is just a big deal to me. And I just really wanted to make sure that more students that are on their college campuses, and maybe if they don't find something that they feel fits them, that they can also be able to do research on other opportunities that are available for them to also start or initiate specific type of organization on their campus that would be more fitting for other students as well, something that they can identify more to. So I certainly respect that, and I think it's great. Something I think it's important for folks to share, which you also touched on, as well as the fact that we're from New York, so I know you're from the BX, the Bronx, and being from the Bronx and being from New York City, I know that it can be very different, being a city girl and being here and growing up a specific type of way, and then like there being like a shock when you go like upstate New York and the things that like you may experience there. Do you want to like speak to that a bit?
Yeah, well, so like you said, coming from the city, when you're in the city, now that I'm on the outside looking in, because I've located, since then and recently, now I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. Don't ask, long story, but I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. So there is a time change, hence, why it's still daylight over here, and, you're snuggled in New York. Yeah, there's a culture shock, but I feel like, when you grow up in New York, sometimes we're in a bubble. Like we're in our own world. Like New York is a totally different ball game than anywhere in the world or even in the United States. You know, there's nothing like it. You know, it has its own culture, its own essence, its own smell. I mean, it's such a special environment. So when you're there, you know, we rode the trains, like we had no fear. We had, you know, everything that we did, you know, meant something, had purpose, and everyone was family. Again, the only thing that separated us was boroughs. Often went to each other's boroughs. Back in the day, in the '90s, I used to take the train all the way to Nordstrom just to get my nails done. I knew many times where, you know, people from after school would jump on the D train to go uptown into the Bronx, so, you know, to hang out or to go to Yankee Stadium. So we kind of always, like, those were our stomping grounds, so to speak. So what we did was we kind of just moved in the same spaces, and nobody ever felt out of place. But when you go to a place like upstate, whether you go to Binghamton University, Cortland, Albany, Oswego, Cornell, Newport, like, New York is, we're a fish out of water. For young people, a lot of times the transition is very difficult. So you're looking for a likeness, so a familiarity. So if you don't go with people that you already know, it's hard to kind of find your niche and feel like you can fit in. Because once you go to those environments, you're combined with so many other young people from other areas.
Mm-hmm.
Out of state, some are from upstate, some of them from, like, as far as Buffalo or Rochester. They grew up differently than what we do. So that's why we're always joking around when they're like, oh, we're from New York. And we're like, yeah, where? We're like, Albany is not New York, or New York City. You know, we always have that back and forth. So going there and being exposed to different cultures, ethnicities, and you know, just the environment itself, which in New York City, we know it, we're comfortable in it. To go to an environment which kind of tests your knowledge of humanity, so to speak, it changes your outlook, and you realize that what you thought you knew, you really didn't. So, you know, that's where, you know, it's great to be, you know, well-rounded as a New Yorker, but when you kind of get out of that space, you know, it's totally different. But unfortunately for young people, if you don't have a good support system, if you don't have good mentors to start you off to kind of guide you through that, or even a good counselor at that university, like, you can kind of like fall through the cracks really easily, because you're trying to find yourself at that point. You know, for a lot of young people, this is the first time that they're leaving their home. You know, leaving the house, not being in the comforts of family. And until you get that, so that's where a lot of young people look for sororities and fraternities, because they're looking for that connection, you know, because again, when you join any organization, whether it's social, political, academic, those are all clubs that you go to be with like-minded individuals. And those individuals, you know, start off as, you know, just members, then they become friends, and then eventually they become family. And down the road, you don't know where those relationships lead. So, yeah, for New Yorkers in particular, it can be a very, what's the word I want? Eye-opening, you know, to say the least, when you get into those environments, because that's where you learn all the things that you thought you knew about life in New York that you've never experienced, because it's a melting pot. You learn it there.
Okay, so Tamika, you know, I gotta go there, because, you know, we keep it real. I want to ask you, are you comfortable sharing like any particular type of story that really drove you to want to start yours, you know, to actually have the sorority on your campus? Like, were you trying to, like, were you interested in a specific, you know, any other type of organization? You don't have to say the name of any other organization that you were interested in, but, like, was there like a situation that occurred that made you want like put you more in this situation where it's like, okay, I'm just gonna start my own?
Well, okay, so I'll be candid without being candid. Obviously, again, we went to a high school in New York City, the West Side, that was African American and Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx, whatever your preference in abbreviations or what have you. And during my time at graphics, obviously my name is Tamika Ortiz. So I grew up in an environment where, uh, Black and Spanish or Black and Hispanic, we just interchanged. So to me, we were one and the same. In my family, you know, we're multicultural, we're multicolored. Not that that's a term, but my family looks like you, and vice versa. Like we have so many spectrums of tones that, in my household, there was never separation. We never denied that we were Black. There was never a need to kind of state it either, or kind of like walk around, oh, I'm Black too. Like there was no need for that. We just all kind of got along. Nobody ever questioned. If anything, I was seen as being more of a Black girl than Spanish, more so because of my name. So they probably thought that I was mixed. So I'm like, okay, I went with it. It didn't bother me. These were my friends and my family. Get to college, my first, initial response was to pledge Black, because that's what I was accustomed to. I was, like I've said before, I'm a New Yorican. I was born in New York City, so I was American. So I spoke English outside of the home. I was Spanish when I got home, but that was my heritage, my culture, and it was at home. There was no, we didn't have any problem with that. I didn't feel bad not speaking Spanish at school. I didn't feel like there was a need for it at any point. That didn't mean that I wasn't in denial of it. But again, going to college, fast forward, my automatic response was to go and pledge Black. But I had, roommates that were Black, and my RA was Black. And I remember just for a particular sorority that I was looking to have interest in. And, I went to her just to kind of get information, and I was just kind of doing my research. And, I told her, and, she's like, oh, that's great. I'm so happy. I would love to have you as a sister. But to be honest, it wouldn't be in your best interest. You need to just find your own. And at first I was like, so we can be sisters, but we can't be sisters. And I'm like, why? And she was like, oh, well, you're light skinned and you're not really considered Black, so they will give you a hard time. So I kind of took it to heart, because that was a part of the first time that race really, affected me personally. And again, that's when I started thinking about what she actually said. You need to find your own. And then I realized, I'm like, okay, have I been going through life all this time just being who I thought I was supposed to be? And that's when the whole introspection came in, and you kind of have to find yourself. We speak about it now in the 20th century and 21st century now, that we're like, oh, you need to find yourself, look at who you are, make sure that you're happy before you can make others happy. And, thinking back now, 20 years back, I was forced to look at myself and look inside. And then what I realized was, if a group of individuals is going to judge me from what I look like on the outside, not even knowing me, not even knowing where I came from, and not even giving me the opportunity to show them who I am, both inside and out, I said, so is that something that I really want to be a part of? And then it just felt like, again, it was more like, quantity versus quality to a certain extent to me, because they were singling, recruits out. And I'll just say recruits. So certain people, because then I would see that they had certain people or certain girls that were not all Black in their chapters, but they had a certain complexion. So it's almost like, okay, you still have to fit a bill to a certain extent. The same thing with the other ones on the, from the Latina side. They had a certain look, depending on which one you were looking at, they walked a certain way. They all kind of carried themselves a certain way. It's just like saying, I'll just go back to high school. we had the guys that all wore Tommy. And then you had the guys that all wore like Columbia. If you wore a Columbia jacket, you didn't wear Tommy Hilfiger. If you were a Tommy guy, you wore Tommy from head to toe.
That is facts. They were playing no games. It was no mismatching, none of that. Don't you dare, don't you ever.
It was sneakers, socks, and then you had the Timbs. Whoever wore Timbs, you had a certain look. You wore the Timbs with the Columbias and the plaid shirts. I was I wore the leather jacket. I was the leather jacket with the collar up all the time. So that was me.
Uptown, y'all wore black. Y'all wore a lot of black. I don't know what that was about. But y'all like black and y'all had y'all leather.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. So when you start looking at all the sororities and fraternities across the board, I started realizing that, even in wanting to be a part of something, you still have to fit into a certain mold. So I stood back and I said, you know what, if this is what it takes, then you know what, I want no parts of it. I said, I wasn't cliquey in high school. I kind of did my own thing. I dressed my own way and I knew everybody. I was friends with everybody. I was cool with everybody. I incorporated everybody. I was like, you know what, I'm more of a multicultural person. I'm like, let me be UNICEF. Let me get everybody together. I'm like, I don't want to be a part of anything that is just everyone looks the same. I'm like, I never liked that. I'm like, I wore silver because everybody was wearing gold. I wore my, my hoops, but they were sterling silver. I just always wanted to be different. I didn't want to feel like I had to pretend to be like everybody else. So that's when my research came into play, and I started researching and just canvassing not only my university, but then I started looking at the parameters and seeing what else was close by. So I checked what was, what they had in Syracuse and what was, in New Paltz. And then that's how I found, and I started connecting dots. And once I started looking, like I said, most of the missions are all the same. We're all community-based service organizations. We all have similar, the only thing that changes is the language, but we're all kind of have the same mission. We want to uplift the community. We want to, highlight sisterhood and, all the things that come into of that to kind of just better humanity. But, there's always going to be that differential, that one factor that's going to stand out. So when I came upon, Sigma Iota Alpha, what stood out was that it was multicultural. It was Latina based, but multicultural. And as soon as I saw that, I'm like, that's me. I said, my heart is Latina because my family is that way, but I'm like, we're a mixture. I said, we're African, we're Spanish, we're Taino Indian. I'm like, that's a whole lot of complexities that make up who we are as individuals. And I'm like, I can't denounce either or. So I said, if I can find, an organization that is going to celebrate all of those factors and appreciate what we bring to the table as individuals, then I'm all for it. And I can roll with that.
Right. Awesome.
That's awesome. To be.
Thank you so much for that, Tamika. I appreciate your candidness and your openness about that. I think it's great for us to be able to accept all of who we are. And folks, we are talking about the 90s. Things may have progressed or not. But, at the end of the day, we definitely, want to acknowledge who we are, and we want to celebrate all of who we are. And it's great when we do have options available. So, pledge where you're happy, join the sisterhood and the brotherhood where you're most comfortable. And, know that was one person that came to Tamika. This is Tamika's story. Everybody has their own story, so we appreciate Tamika for sharing her story today. And by you founding, the organization on your campus, more than likely you made other, young ladies comfortable, to celebrate all of who they are. And I certainly celebrate that, and I celebrate you. Now, I know that you're also, director of HR at your company in Arizona, and I wanted to know, what advice would you have for young people, that actually may be in a situation where maybe they're uncomfortable, like maybe filling out a job application, or I don't know, like if like maybe they feel like they'll be discriminated against in any way because of like maybe their name or their background when they fill like a resume or something like that.
Um, and again, I speak from experience. Again, my name is Tamika Ortiz. On paper, depending on who the recruiter is, whoever the HR administrator is, they're going to look at your name. And unfortunately, historically, we've been dismissed for our names, if it's too ethnic for them. And there's been many times where in the past, people would say, oh, you know what, my name is Jose Jones. And I sent it to this company, I was referred and I never got a call back. But the next week, I decided to send it again and I put Joe Jones. Same criteria, nothing changed other than my name on the top of that paper, and immediately got a call back. So to say that there isn't bias in the workplace and that you have the power to yay and nay resumes, there's always two piles. There's always, that pile that is qualified and meets the requirements, and then the one that is not. But historically, in some companies, and I mean, there's been probably books written about it and articles, and how people have really been kind of passed over because of a name. And even at one time, I felt that that was occurring with me. So what I did was I just initialed my name. So, and I did the same thing. I said, you know what, let me try this out. Let me see if I get the same feedback. And I tried it, and I put, I sent one in, Tamika Ortiz, the same type of information. My son just turned the light off on me. Sorry. The same type of information, and nothing changed. So I had my first one that said, Tamika C. Ortiz, that's my name. I don't write my entire name out. And then the next time I submitted it as TC Ortiz, where one, you couldn't tell if I was male or female, and two, you didn't know where those initials came from. They could have been Tanya, Tammy, Thomas, or Tyrone, Tashina, whatever they could kind of fathom in their mind. But, when you're looking at a resume, it should just be a piece of paper that is black and white. You should be just a candidate that's black and white, and the name shouldn't even phase you. But 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when names started kind of getting more creative, and they weren't common, for American standards, and that's what I'm going to say, they're not common for American standards, that's how people were being kind of singled out and discriminated against. They will never admit to it, but it was being done. And like I said, I've been privy to it, because even when I was coming up in my career and I was kind of on the bottom and just kind of like just learning, learning the ropes, I would even see our own people of color that were in those ranks, look at them and start, making fun of the names, or, the fact that maybe they had, too long of a name. And how there's always stereotypes of, oh, so-and-so, so-and-so, and has, 3-4 last names at the end, or a name after a drink or whatever. So then, they start making all of these presumptions and automatic, assumptions of who this individual is, what they look like, and what they would bring. So yeah, discrimination is real. It still occurs. And I tell people, you know what? Sometimes, unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that in a lot of work environments, it's who you know, not what you know. But even with that being said, if you're going into a brand new, forum that you've never been a part of, I would always recommend, if you feel that, you've put your best foot forward, and your name, although you're proud of your name and your parents gave you that name with all the love in the world, is a little bit of a setback, shift. Either use your middle name and your last name, or just use your initials. Once you get your foot in the door and you get that job that you wanted, that's your time to kind of show your true colors, be able to be who you are, encompass your own identity, and move forward, and then prove to them that, you know what, oh yeah, uh, if they say, oh yeah, Miss Ortiz, TC Ortiz, what does that stand for? Tamika, can I help you? You know, and they're like, oh wow, I would have never thought that. I'm like, of course not. But you see it on my, then you can, if you have a plaque, you be like, well, this is my, when they ask you, oh, how would you like your name written on the door? Then you can go and write your name however you feel fit. But sometimes, I say, as much as, it kind of goes against what I believe, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what, sometimes you have to do whatever it takes to get your foot in the door legally. And then, once you get your foot in, then, you're confident. You have to be confident in your abilities and what you know and what you can bring to the table. And once you do that, what's in a name at that point? They'll totally forget, that your name is ethnic or is this and that. And actually right now with all the racial unrest that we're having and people trying to be, compliant and things of the sort, they're trying to, stray away from those things. But at the same time, they're still committing the same biases. So, all I suggest is, one, never settle for something, and don't try so hard to be a part of an organization, a company, or anything that is going to be so disrespectful that once you get there, it's not going to be any better. If they're disrespecting you from the beginning, what makes you think that it's not going to continue? So always try, always be true to yourself. Don't settle for anything less than what you deserve. You know, if you went to school and you've learned the trade and you have all this, you have all this experience and you have practicums and internships and all of these things underneath your belt, you know what? Be true to yourself and your abilities, and moving forward in life, no matter what, there's always going to be that one person that's going to give you an opportunity. But if you feel that, you're trying and trying, don't ever give up, and my, it's just a recommendation to, use your initials. When I got my current job as director, after I left New York from being a HR business manager for, I don't know, 10 plus years, when I came here, I got my job as a director for a behavioral health organization with my name, Tamika C. Ortiz. And it wasn't a question. Once they saw me, they kind of looked back because, of course, they still judged me and had a perception of who I was just according to my name. So when I walked through that door with my suit and briefcase, they were kind of taken back. I can't say what their, that 30 seconds when they first saw me, what they thought, because they will never say it. But I'm pretty sure I wasn't what they expected. But once the interview ended, I got the job right on the spot. So it just goes to show that, I went in there confident in my abilities and in my experience. And by the end of the day, that job was mine. So, again, it just kind of, you have to weigh the things out, but never, never backpedal, stay true to yourself, never settle, and always do your research and your homework. Go into any situation, just knowing that you're capable, you're able, and you deserve so much more. So for those of you who are looking to obviously move forward in life, go to college, sororities are great, fraternities are great, but you know what? They're not for everyone. So I would never push it. I encourage you to at least try it. Don't knock it till you try it, but at the same time, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing. you can always be an ally. You can always be a friend. You can always still take part in activities that are being promoted and thrown by these organizations. And you don't have to be a letter wearing member. You know, you always have tons of those people. There's always an ally. You know, you always want to be a part of organizations that are improving the quality of life for people. But again, don't do it because you want to, not because your friends are doing it or your roommate is doing it. You have to do it for you, and you have to know that what you're getting yourself into is not short term. I'm going into 21 years. You know, my sorority sisters are my friends, my families, my ride or dies. If I need anything, 3 o'clock in the morning over here in Arizona, and I'm like, I need a favor, I make a phone call or I just go into a chat, and right away they're like, oh, I got you. What do you need? Do you want me to mail this to you? During the whole pandemic, you know, when they were in New York, I reached out. I'm like, okay, we're not on shutdown yet. My Costco is full. What do you guys need? I sent, you know, ibuprofen over, aspirin, whatever we had that we had on this end. It was one thing to kind of help people in this community that I live in, but my community is in New York. So when you were in need, that's where I helped first. So again, I wish everyone luck in their journey. It's one that is full of ups and downs, obstacles, but if you stay focused and true to yourself and your abilities and what you have learned in life and what you will continue to learn in life, you know, you'll all do great.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Say that last part you said.
I said, as have we. I said, I think we've continued our friendship, you know, throughout the years.
Yes.
In high school, through college, and
Facts.
now we're
Sister,
still here.
this is my sister. I pledged Me Fi Me. I didn't join any organizations. I was thinking about one. I haven't gone to grad school yet. But but seriously, Tamika has always been a sister. I appreciate you so very much. Much love to you. Thanks so much for sharing your story, your journey. You are a trailblazer, and I thank you so much for being you and continuing to operate in your leadership. I mean, you have always been that leader, and it's in you on purpose. So thank you for being you and continuing to set paths and leave markers for more to continue to join the journey and create new paths for others.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I will continue as long as I can. And again, you know, good luck on this journey and this new chapter that you've created for yourself. And invite me back again.
All right. Thank you so much, Tamika. Listen, you all, you are so welcome to definitely put some items in the comments if you have anything that you want to share or, you know, anything like that. Definitely make sure you follow Threshold World College Edition on Instagram. Threshold World is on Facebook as well. And continue to be blessed on your journey. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.